Gentlemen, I'd like to quickly introduce myself. I'm Tony Susandi from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Republic of Indonesia. Today, I will talk about the government perspective on the renewable microgrid in Indonesia. Next slide. Today's presentation outline consists of current energy development status in Indonesia, and then new and renewable energy policy and regulation. I will continue to talk about microgrid development in Indonesia, and we can close the session by sharing the lesson learned from the microgrid development in Indonesia. As you might already know that Indonesia is committed to Paris Agreement, and in terms of energy sector in Indonesia, we are committed to reduce the greenhouse emission as much as 29% from business as usual with national effort, and 41% from business as usual with international support. This national commitment translated into energy sector commitment is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 314 up to 398 million tons of CO2 by 2030. This Paris Agreement is already ratified into Law Number 16, year 2016. In this slide, we can see that the renewable energy potential has not yet maximized. In Indonesia, we have a total potential of 442 gigawatt of electricity, but the utilization up to now is still low, around 0.2% or 10.30 gigawatt. With the details as follow: ocean still zero, geothermal we are quite high, almost 2 gigawatt, and then biodiesel almost 2 gigawatt, followed by hydro, the biggest one, 6 gigawatt, and then wind still small, 150 megawatt, as well as solar energy, 160 megawatt. In our country, the renewable energy development purposes, there are four. First of all, to increase the energy supply, we have a target 23% in 2025, which is equivalent to 45 gigawatt capacity of electricity. And then, secondly, to accelerate the provision of modern energy access. This is how we could increase the electrification ratio target to 100% in 2020. The third one is to contribute to the greenhouse gas reduction program. Indonesia, as I mentioned before, we commit to reduce 29% greenhouse gas emission in 2030. And this is translated into contribution from energy sector, around 314 million tons of CO2. Last but not least, to contribute to national non-tax revenue and foreign exchange savings. We could see the new and renewable energy target on our national energy policy based on government regulation number 79 year 2014 concerning national energy policy. We have 5 points that were to be mentioned. First of all, maximizing the use of renewable energy. As we can see, we will mainstream the renewable energy portion from currently 9.15 to 23%. And then we will continue to minimize the use of oil. We will optimize the utilization of new gas and energy. The use of coal as the main national energy supply. And then utilization of nuclear power plants as the last options. This is our national energy policy. We have also another planning document, our national planning on the development for 2020 to 2024. We will develop some 9 gigawatt capacity of renewable energy, consists of hydropower around 4 gigawatt, and then bioenergy around 1.3 gigawatt, solar PV around 2 gigawatt, wind around 0.7 gigawatt, and geothermal around 1 gigawatt. On the following slides, I would like to share with you about the new and renewable energy infrastructure development pipeline. Traditionally, there are two approaches to increase the new and renewable energy electricity capacity. First of all is commercial one, and secondly, the non-commercial approach. In the commercial approach, there are some schemes for this approach, such as system is communal off-grid and on-grid, could be in terms of solar PV, hydropower, wind turbine, biomass, etc. And then the funding source coming from private sector or investment. In terms of non-commercial approach, the energy infrastructure development for remote villages and borderline area is the focus. The system is usually off-grid, consists of solar PV, hydropower, wind turbine, biomass, and solar lamp system. The funding source mainly coming from national budget or government budget, grant, or special allocation fund to the local government. This is the legal basis for both approaches. For commercial one, we have Ministerial of Energy Mineral Regulation number 4, 2020, concerning the utilization of renewable energy sources for the electricity provision purposes. This regulates the renewable energy price. And we have as well Minister Regulation number 38, 2016, to enable the acceleration of electrification in underdeveloped, remote, border, and populated small islands through the implementation of small-scale electricity provision enterprises. And we have as well the regulation in place for the non-commercial approaches from Presidential Regulation number 47, 2017, and the following Ministry of Energy regulations. So, to give you a more background on this development program, we have 3 types to increase the electrification ratio in our country. First of all, if the village is close to the national grid, then the approach is using the grid extension. But there are a lot of cases that villages are far from the grid, but the population is dense, centralized. Then we apply the off-grid or mini-grid system, such as using the solar PV system. There is also some villages with scattered inhabitants. For this kind of type, we use the solar-powered energy-saving lamp, or we call it in Indonesia LTSH. This is our achievements from 2011 up to now. We have already installed almost 730 units of solar PV and hydro and hybrid PV microgrid all over Indonesia. And we calculate there are some almost 40 megawatt new and renewable energy already installed in rural areas in Indonesia. Challenges for intermittent variable renewable energy implementation. First of all, the unstable output of electricity because it depends on the weather. Solar PV is dependent on the sunlight, while wind turbine output also fluctuates based on the strength of the wind. The readiness of the grid to receive the variable renewable energy deployment. In Indonesia, the grid is mostly conventional, which cannot accommodate the disruption due to intermittent VRE's unstable output. So, one of the solutions is to implement the microgrid development. This is some microgrid projects development in Indonesia. For instance, in Sumba Island, we have 4.7 megawatt peak solar PV. And then ongoing project, there are 3 PLN and ADB project in Selayar, Tahuna, and Medang. This is basically a hybrid system, solar PV with battery and existing diesel or new diesel power plant. We have also some program on the Sumba Iconic Island, which I believe our colleague from another institution will talk to you about this in more detail. But in general, this Sumba microgrid development is part of Sumba Iconic Island initiatives launched by our ministry and Bappenas and HIFOS in 2010. The objective is to increase the electrification ratio in Sumba Island, which is around 24.5% in 2010, while also reducing its dependency on fossil fuel by utilizing more abundant renewable energy potential on the island. The target in the end of the program is Sumba will be supplied by 100% renewable energy. The result so far, the electrification ratio is around 50.9%, with renewable energy share in the energy mix constitutes around 21%. Total investment already around 50 million US dollars. So this is an explanation on the microgrid project developments between ADB and our state-owned electricity company, PT PLN. The project is having support from ADB in terms of loan to improve the quality of electricity provision at 4 locations in 4 different provinces in Indonesia. The COD is targeted on 2021. This is another potential for microgrid projects in Indonesia. At least there are some 100 megawatt that can be developed, which should be coupled with local economic resources in Riau Islands, Bangka Belitung, Nusa Tenggara Barat, Nusa Tenggara Timur, Sulawesi Tenggara, Sulawesi Utara, Maluku Utara, and Maluku and Papua as well. So what are the roles and purposes of new and renewable energy-based economic cluster development? There are four purposes for this NRE-based economic cluster. First of all, to encourage the rise of new economic centers by utilizing local energy potential, and to support the regions to become the pillar of natural resource-based industrial production. Third one is to increase the capacity for local communities to improve their welfare. And last but not least, to distribute equally the regional development outside the main island, Java and Bali. So some pilot project of microgrid development for economy purposes already in place, such as the pilot project for cold storage. This is a project collaboration between GIZ, Fraunhofer, and Unilever in 2017. The system is a hybrid PV coupled with existing diesel generator. We have solar ice maker application as well, with least cost alternative for ice production by utilizing solar PV power output. The system is using 25 kilowatt peak solar PV to produce 1 ton ice per day. Closure. Our lesson learned that we could share with you with regard to development of microgrid in Indonesia. First of all, Indonesia still has a huge task in order to achieve its 23% new and renewable energy share target by 2025. Secondly, microgrid could provide a solution in increasing new and renewable energy contribution in the power mix by facilitating intermittent VRE renewables deployment into the grid. The third one, microgrid may encourage better productivity and welfare improvement for local communities, as has been shown in various project locations in Indonesia. I think that's all for the presentation. Thank you for your kind attention, and we're looking forward for discussion and question and answer.